Greetings, I am Herbert Erpaderp, and it's time for another episode of Ask a Herbert Erpaderp, the Herbert Erpaderp Ask an Ask video series that ever asked a Herbert Erpaderp anything. First up, we have a patron voice question from Major General Bunk.
Hello Herbert. A lot of people in the community are fans of Warhammer 40,000, myself included, but what's your thoughts on it?
I think for the most part 40k is pretty cool. It's the first wargame that I ever played, and it's a large part of why I'm doing modelling today. I'm not really that interested in playing it so much nowadays, and I don't buy the models anymore, though sometimes I am quite tempted. I like how silly the 40k universe is. Unfortunately, it is pretty expensive, which is why I don't just buy the models for shits and giggles. But then I guess most wargaming hobbies aren't exactly cheap. Either way, it gets a thumbs up from me. Don't forget that if you're a patron, if you want to, you can ask a voice question with your own voice like Major General Bunk has. Moving on to the text-based questions. EP Art said, Tamiya's 1/48th scale M60 Patton, Stridswagen 103, and Type 74 models date back to the early 1970s. Any guess as to which one will most likely get a new tooling for Tamiya's military miniature series someday? I would only be guessing, of course, having no knowledge of Tamiya's processes, but I think out of those, the Patton would seem most likely. The only reason I say that is because I figured that would be the most popular of the three vehicles. I imagine they would use what's likely to sell the most as a metric when deciding on what models to produce. Obviously, having no real knowledge, I could be way off. A10 Warthog says, I'm a new modeler and haven't painted any of them. Do you have any techniques I could try? I'm not really sure of techniques per se, not like special ones or anything, but I would say start at the beginning, obviously. Get the basic techniques down like priming and applying base coats smoothly, and things like thinning paint. That one's pretty important. You should get used to how much to thin your paint and applying multiple thin coats and trying to be as neat as you can. It'll take some time and effort, but it will be worth it. If you've got an airbrush, priming and base coats can be pretty easy. Most beginners don't though, and that's okay. You can still get a nice result with a brush. Try to use appropriately sized brushes for the task that you are doing. There's probably a million videos on how to apply basic coats of paint, and they'll probably say stuff like take your time, be patient, and realize that not everybody is great at everything when they first start. And those things are true. I would also suggest trying things on scrap plastic, or, if you have them, older models that you don't really care about. Doing that before trying things out on your favourite model is going to save some heartbreak. I hope that's at least somewhat helpful. Kenny McCormick said, do you ever want to get an RC tank like a Panzer IV? I do already have an RC T-3485, and it's pretty cool, but I almost never play with it. Also, they are quite expensive, so I don't really plan on getting more of them, not unless somehow I become rich anyway. Trekan Beluvic said, if you are unhappy with how the painting of a model turned out, repainting or doing better next time. It really depends. If for some reason I need the model to be done and painted, then I'll do it again. But usually I would prefer just to do better next time, preferably after a break to work on something else so that I could come back to it nice and fresh. Happy Doggo said, do you have a car? I'll pay you $60 to run me over. You're going to need to pay a lot more than $60 for that kind of thing, especially considering that it's something I would really rather not do, and my car would get damaged. You'd need to pay to fix that as well. EP Art said, thoughts on the idea of larger scale white metal models with little to no resin parts. The idea has rarely been done, example the vintage limited edition 40k Thunderhawk from the 1990s, or the 35th scale German Tiger 1 by Model Factory Hero. Should all metal models be limited to smaller scales, or are the hefty chonkers a cool novelty? I don't think all metal models should be limited to smaller scales. That seems kind of silly. If people want to buy them, or if somebody thinks there's enough of a market to support making them, then why not? It is certainly a kind of novelty, at least in my opinion. It doesn't seem like all that good an idea to me though, mostly because larger models made entirely of white metal would weigh quite a bit, and I would imagine they'd also be quite prone to breaking when bumped. I mean, maybe not if it was one single solid piece, but I don't see that being the case. I guess you could pin the parts, but that would be a bit of a pain, and still not a guarantee against breakage. Either way, I think plastic is a better choice than white metal for that kind of thing. Argonaut 248 said, do you have any advice for weathering 1/35th scale tanks? Also, how are you? I don't weather a lot of tanks in this scale because, well, I just don't paint that many of them. But I would say that you can't quite get away with just the little hints of weathering being quite as effective as they are in smaller scales, if that makes sense. I mean, in a lot of cases you don't have to do a lot of detail for weathering, and a dirty coloured wash or something like that will look effectively like dirt. On a larger scale model, bigger chips with a lot more detail will look pretty good, and they can look like overkill on smaller scale models. Dirt effects with some texture to them will look good, and mud with some chunkiness to it will also look good, whereas on smaller models, big chunks of mud look out of scale. Also, and this is totally personal preference really, with any weathering, I like to suggest trying to not overdo it. It's really easy to go too far with stuff, especially mud and rust. A lot of modelers add way too much of it, and to be fair, it can look really cool, but it's not always realistic. I guess it depends on what you're going for really. A tank that's been in service isn't likely to be absolutely covered in rust, and they probably wouldn't be spending too much time totally caked in mud either. Some poor bastard's going to have to clean that off. Also, I'm doing the best I can. I'm still pretty sick, but I'm trying not to let it get to me too much. LonelyBot said, what is, well, that? I'm not sure how one would read that out loud. It looks like gibberish to me. Either that or it's an attempt to get somebody to answer some school homework or something. So, I have no idea. Bob said, I'm new to your channel, but why do you not paint your models? Somebody added a little clown reaction emote thing to this one, and I think that's because this is the kind of question a clown would ask. You'll find that in fact I do paint my models, just not all of them, and there are plenty of painting videos on my channel. I feel like I've said this a million times, but I don't have time to paint a model every single week. I am a pretty slow painter. It takes enough time to do the build video that there's no time to both paint the model and add that to the video as well. Not without doing a really shitty job of both painting and video editing. I mean, I probably could do that if I was feeling healthy and was even remotely interested in spending all of my time working on models and videos, and at that point it is quite a lot of work for nowhere near suitable compensation. Turns out only doing one thing with your life is pretty miserable. I do like doing other hobbies as well, and spending time with people I care about, and there's always those other little things that happen when you're required to adult. Martin Gotham said, what is your oldest model in your collection? I don't know. Probably some Tau Fire Warriors for 40k, or maybe some of the model trains I have. Those are pretty old actually. Trekan Beluvic said, your opinion on naps. I do quite enjoy a good nap. On the other hand though, it's been pretty frustrating while I've been sick to do so much sleeping when I would really prefer not to, but I guess it is nice to be able to because my body obviously needs it, so overall, naps are good. Things generally feel better when you're properly rested. Rivergator said, can a European swallow carry a coconut? No. I know there's a Monty Python quote about airspeed velocity and such, but I don't remember it exactly. Just imagine that I did, and delivered it in a very entertaining manner. Smoes said, what motivates you to work hard? I know myself my work ethic isn't the best. Any advice or life experience on the matter? The things that make me want to work hard are things like being passionate about the thing. I guess that's really the only thing. If it's not something I care about, I really struggle to work hard. Maybe that's not such a bad thing if you think that you should work smart, not hard, where possible. I happily work really hard on things for myself, but I've always had a lot of difficulty being motivated when it comes to jobs. I've been told that I have a bad work ethic, but I don't think I do. I'm just not that excited to work my ass off for somebody else's thing. Pretty much all of the jobs I've had have been meaningless labour to me, only done for money. And I guess that's probably pretty common, but I do struggle to be motivated because I just don't care. I mean, I'm not negligent or anything, but I'm going to clock off and leave at the scheduled time at the end of my day, and I'm not going to stay back, especially if I'm not going to get paid for it. And I probably won't be that interested even if I am getting paid, because I probably want to go and do something for myself. An example, I guess, is I love to work on videos, but when the videos are for somebody else about something I don't care about, it becomes a chore. That kind of attitude seems to upset some people. We live in a world where slaving away to make somebody else rich is seen as virtuous. I think it's weird. Maybe I'm rambling a bit now, but I feel like if it's something that really matters to you, whatever it is, it's easy to be motivated to work hard, if working smart isn't going to cut it. Maybe you just need to find whatever that is for you. Musei said, "What do you think the highest honor for a modeler is? Example, having your model displayed in a museum or featured in a magazine." I think really it depends on the individual modeler. The examples you gave are really cool things, honors to be sure. For some, people wanting to buy their models or commission them might be the highest honor. For me, it feels really good when somebody tells me that I've either inspired them or helped them somehow. I think if you can help somebody enjoy their hobby a bit more, that's amazing. It's a bit simple I guess, but I feel like that's a pretty high honor. EP Art said, "Thoughts on the idea of ultraviolet radar? Infrared has a wavelength between 700 nanometers to 1 millimeter, whereas UV has a wavelength of from 10 nanometers to 400 nanometers. Despite UV having a shorter range to power output ratio than IR, what are the advantages of having a UV radar?" I have literally never given this any thought. I barely know anything about radar and how it works, and I don't have the energy at the moment to even look up the differences between IR or UV radar if that's even a thing. I am pretty sure that UV would be dangerous to people though. I think it would probably cause a lot of skin cancer. Ratto said, "Best way to wake a sleeping person?" I guess it depends on a few things. Is it an emergency? Is it someone you care about? Why are you waking them up? I think gently nudging the shoulder and maybe saying their name is a pretty good basic way. You might do something different if it's an intimate partner that you're sharing the bed with, and if it's someone you're okay with upsetting or giving a heart attack to, you might blast some loud music or something. It's pretty situational. EP Art said, "Thoughts on the idea of Hiveminded UAVs, able to achieve multiple and/or simultaneous drone strikes? Is it worth designing a subclass of Ford-class carriers around?" It sounds awful to be honest, especially if by hive-minded you mean AI controlled. I wouldn't be surprised if that kind of thing is already well under development, but it seems really bad to me. It doesn't do anything to make the world a better place, only worse. Archmagos Dominus Niveron said, "Which is better, Owen or Sten SMGs?" I don't know. Define better. I'm not that into guns from like a technical standpoint, so I don't tend to memorize their specs or anything like that. I'm pretty sure the Owen was an Australian design though, so that's kind of interesting, but from the perspective of somebody who's pretty indifferent to guns, they seem more or less the same. Ghost Dog said, "Can I play with madness?" I was tempted to try and answer in a Bruce Dickinson impression, but then I realised just how awful that would be. So yes, of course, you can play with madness, and now I need to go and listen to some Iron Maiden. In the YouTube comment section of last month's Ask Herbert Erpaderp, a few people had some well wishes around health, and I certainly appreciate that. Being sick sucks, especially when it's a bit prolonged. I've had more blood tests since the last Ask Herbert Erpaderp, and I have more to come. I'm also being tested for celiac, which doesn't seem like a fun prospect, but I still haven't really got any more answers. It's pretty frustrating, really. It feels bad when I just don't get the time to finish a video, but I also know that I'm going to regret it if I push myself too hard. The last couple of weeks have actually been extra bad. One of my best friends had a pulmonary embolism and I wasn't able to visit in hospital because I'm not family and because of COVID. He's doing okay now, but that's still pretty awful. Also, my grandfather was put into palliative care and passed away about a week later. We weren't really that close, but it still sucks and I felt it was important to spend some time with him before he died, and I'm glad that I got to. Sometimes life can just suck. Sometimes it really just wants to prove to you just how fragile and fleeting it can be, but we move forward as best we can. And to answer Yan Tima, I don't plan on doing any figure painting. I'm not really that interested in painting figures, but I have been working on some vehicles where I feel up to it. I am trying to get a painting video done this month, but who knows if I actually will. ePhoenix Art said, "Have you been to Sega World Sydney back when it was open? If so, how was it?" I'm pretty sure that this is the first time I've heard of it, so I haven't been there and therefore have no idea how it was. It's probably something I would have enjoyed, assuming that it's the same Sega that makes video games, and not something completely different. Not really sure I would make the trip down to Sydney for something like that, but if I happened to be there, why not? Anyway, that's it for the questions this month. Let's have a look at some of the models that have been shared on the Discord server. First up, Trekan Belovic has shared some German infantry shooty mans. These are Battlefront 15mm scale figures, obviously very nicely painted and based very well. The models are mid-war Germans, but Trekan turned them into late-war infantry with some paint trickery. The figures have Nobelbecher, which I think is boots. Trekan painted gaiters on them to make them into shoes with gaiters. I would never have known that little detail, but I do know that these infantry look great. Ghost Dog shared this 28mm scale Valentine. It looks very nicely done, and I happen to know that this is a pretty good little kit from Rubicon Models. I built the one that makes the earlier marks, and I think this is a Mark 9, but the kit should be more or less the same. Obviously, Ghost Dog has painted his, so it's going to be a lot more effective on the gaming table. Nicely done. Graf Pudding shared this diorama that has been named Frühstück, or breakfast. I'm probably saying that wrong. The content of this diorama is apparently 48% Tamiya, 48% Italeri, 2% Milliput, and 2% Blood, Sweat and Tears. Blood, Sweat and Tears are a pretty unorthodox thing to use in modelling, and I wouldn't really recommend it, but you can't argue with the results. This looks awesome, and there's a lot of stuff going on, which obviously makes it interesting to look at. I don't know about you, but a wartime breakfast scene isn't something that I see very often in models. It's really cool to see something a bit different like this. I notice something new every time I look at it. Excellent work. Ratto shared this set of 13 horsemen, saying that they were painted in January, though they've only just been recently based. Ratto made the bases from 2 washers, Plasticard and Milliput. That's obviously 2 washers per base and not in total. These are 28mm scale metal models from Crusader Miniatures, and they look fantastic. D-U-M-G-E? Daumgi? This is a name that I'm not entirely sure how to say, but that's not really the point here. This person has shared this fantastic plane. I think this is a BF-109, and we all know that I'm not a plane identifying wizard, but that's probably what it is. I have no idea what variant, no information was shared with the pictures. That's okay though. The important thing is that this is really nicely painted. Doomgi said that they hate the rigging, but I think it looks really cool and adds a lot, and certainly worth it in the end. And that's all the modelling for this month. Obviously that's not everything that's been shared on Discord, but in the interest of time, I've only included a few. If you'd like to see everything, be sure to head on over to Discord, the link to which is in the description, and check out the modelling section. As always, a very big thank you to everybody who shared their modelling work, asked questions, and of course thank you to my patrons and folks who subscribe on Twitch. I appreciate you all. Ask a Herbert Erpaderp will be back again next month, so if your burning questions can wait that long for an answer, feel free to put them in the comment section below, or over on Discord in the Ask a Herbert Erpaderp channel. And if you've not already done so, why not subscribe, follow, ring the bell, become a patron, or maybe just come say hi on Discord or Twitch. Links to all of my things are in the description below, and, as always, I shall return soon. So, until then, be excellent to each other, and thanks for watching. Farewell.